So after I kept seeing so many posts and reviews covering the new DreamWorks movie, The Wild Robot, I decided to go to a theater and watch it, and my word, this film was amazing. I am not kidding when I say this was one of the most wholesome animated movies I've seen in years. Basically, what I have to say about it is what everyone is saying about it. It was another slam dunk by DreamWorks Animation. Even if Kung Fu Panda 4 was a fart in the wind, and DreamWorks are sometimes a miss with their films, you can't deny that when they knock it out of the park, they knock it out. The basic story is that this robot, designed for carrying out simple tasks, accidentally gets stranded on this island filled with wild animals. One thing leads to another, and it ends up with the robot having to take care of this baby goose with the help of a sly fox. From there, not only is it an emotionally investing story about the relationship between this robot and her baby goose, but there's some pretty fascinating questions it asks about the relationship between robots and living things. Can we break our programming or things inherent in our nature for the ones we love and for the greater good? It had some surprisingly profound and mature themes for a family film. On top of that, it's a concept so strange yet so creative, it reminded me of something Disney and Pixar would have made 20 years ago, and yet when I look at them today, all I can ask is, what the f happened? Now, as I normally do on this channel, I was planning to compare this to whatever trash Disney is going to be producing, but then I was struck with the realization that I don't even have to wait on Disney. I already know whatever they're going to produce is going to be mid or trash. Besides a couple of gems here and there, the creative downfall of Disney and Pixar is something that needs to be studied. The studio, once a pioneer for innovation and creative stories, is now stuck in a repetitive loop of cash grab sequels and soulless live-action remakes. There's so many reasons why people are turning on this once beloved studio and redirecting their attention to Sony, or in this case, DreamWorks. That's what I want to cover in this video, why The Wild Robot is everything Disney has lost.
It's really technically proficient, but there's really no heart or soul in it.
I think most can agree when I say Disney has a certain formula when it comes to making their stories. It follows a traditional 3-act structure, so most of the time you can predict where the story is going, and that's not a bad thing. The best movies ever made follow this simple structure, and while it's easier to see this outline in family movies, I think it should be the goal of a filmmaker or writer to take a concept we've seen 100 times and make it feel like something we've never seen. However, something feels off about Disney's newer movies. Their films have become so safe, I feel like I can see the storyboard in front of me. It feels like a manufactured series of events instead of a, well, story. Now you could say maybe it's time to change up the formula and deliver something radically different, but I don't think that's the case. The problem isn't necessarily their formula, it's the way they formalized their formula.
Let me break it down for you.
In modern Disney films, the lead will be clumsy with a heart of gold, usually on a quest of self-discovery. There will be 2 sets of small, cute creatures to aid in their quest. Maybe a love interest or an unconventional partner will join and butt heads with the protagonists. They finally confront the terribly written villain of whatever quest they went on, and then they discover the true power was inside them all along. The end. As I've demonstrated, they're not just using the same skeletal outline for their stories anymore. They are using the same corpse and stitching on a new set of skin, trying to convince you it's something new. These are why I think the allegations of Disney using AI to create Wish has some serious legitimacy. Not only were aspects of the dialogue and songs so robotic, but the story was too. Every one of these story beats and formulas I've demonstrated earlier were cranked up to 100 in this movie. Basically, Disney is trying everything in their power to be as creatively bankrupt as possible. Luckily, this is where The Wild Robot shines. DreamWorks, like Disney, will take common tropes or story structures and use them in their movies, but the concepts, tone, and even animation styles are so different from each other, I feel like I'm getting a brand new experience every time I go to see one of their movies. The Wild Robot's a story with many tropes going on at once, such as the robot understanding emotions, a single parent trying their best to raise a child, and the importance of family, etc. It even has small cute animal sidekicks and an underdeveloped villain to fight in the climax. But the filmmakers took the time to make this story and characters feel different from what they've done in the past. They take things you're familiar with and combine them to deliver something you've never seen before. This is why, even though this is the same studio that made The Boss Baby, I have so much more respect for them than I do Disney at this point. Because for every Trolls or Shark Tales they make, they also give us a Prince of Egypt, How to Train Your Dragon, Shrek, and so on. Every film by them feels like they're trying something new. I can't say the same for Disney and Pixar at all. Now, this doesn't mean they haven't tried in recent years. Films like Soul have shown the companies still have some artistic integrity to them. Even Onward, Turning Red, and Luca, though each of these vary in quality, at least felt like they were trying to do something different. However, this brings me into my next point of why even though Disney and Pixar will try something new every now and again, the studios we once loved will never come back, and it all has to do with the absolute number one problem Disney is facing is the way they spend their money. Holy shit, why are their budgets so big? Like, look at this. Wish was made on a budget of $200 million, okay? But then, if you factor in $100 million for advertising and an additional $62 million for residuals and stuff, the final budget of this piece of one of the worst written, worst animated Disney films ever made, cost $362 million to make. Disney! What are you doing? Now take a look at the Wild Robot. This animation looks incredible, mixing the 3D meets 2D paintbrush style that's been taking over for the past several years. However, this must have cost them so much because the amount of detail and attention they give to every frame, $78 million. Okay, how about Into the Spider-Verse, which is considered by many the greatest animated film of the 2010s, and one of the best of all time. Its style completely changed the game in terms of what animation could do. Sony must have spent a fortune trying to write an anime $90 million. You know what? Let's take a look into Disney's past. How about arguably their best movie, The Lion King? That cost around $45 million to make, but in today's economy, that's gotta be worth hundreds of millions, roughly $95 million. So as we can see, the budget of Disney's movies has increased while the quality of the content has begun to decrease. Meanwhile, the movies not made by Disney barely scratch a third of what they spend, and the quality is outstanding. Why is this? Well, for a while there in the late 2000s and early 2010s, Disney and Pixar was a money printing machine. I think it first started with the film Frozen. This movie was massive when it came out, not only being a smashing success at the box office, but a cultural juggernaut in the media landscape. It was everywhere, and you could not avoid the hype train around it. With this newly found success and an ever-expanding empire with the acquisition of Lucasfilm and the MCU finding its footing, Disney could demand enormous budgets for their films because their products were so sought after. Supply and demand, baby. However, compromises had to be made if they were going to spend this much. With more money comes more assurances that a film wouldn't flop. And what do executives think will fix this? Easy marketability, accessibility to reach a global audience, appealing to people who espouse the message, and basically deny any script that couldn't be seen as a billion-dollar hit. However, this strategy is the very thing killing them. In their quest to cater to everyone with their films, they end up catering to no one. This isn't just related to their animated projects though. Their live-action IPs are suffering the same fate. Though many are rejoicing that Disney seems to be turning away from their political pandering, it doesn't change the fact that their writing still sucks. Instead of appealing to radical activists online, they now seem to be turning to nostalgia or fan service, but it's still filled with the same lifeless, empty corporate pandering as before. If Disney wants to make a change and become the pioneers they once were, there's things they need to do. They need to ask themselves. The thing about asking this question is that fans online have been saying the solution for years now. Lower the budgets of your projects, focus on quality, and let proven, competent writers who aren't driven by a current agenda tell the stories they want to tell. Just look at The Wild Robot. It's not on track to make $1 billion, but it doesn't have to. They knew where to put in the work and how much to realistically spend for the movie. Due to this, the studio not only made their money back, but they made so much that a sequel is already in the works, on top of the other projects they're currently working on. If other studios are having success where Disney is failing, why won't they just follow this formula? Is it out of pride because they're supposed to be the trendsetters? Is it greed and wanting to make the same amount of money as they were in the 2010s? Or is it just sheer incompetence? In short, Yes, I think in real time we are seeing the fall of an empire. If we want the writing to be good in their movies again, we're either going to have to wait for their collapse and restart, or just turn to alternative forms of entertainment. Looking at their upcoming slate of releases, there's like a handful I'm looking forward to. Incredibles 3 needs to be the sequel we deserved back in 2018, and the other two are brand new ideas that hopefully can capture the spirit of their older movies. That's about it though. Everything else is completely unnecessary sequels and remakes of beloved films no one asked for or wanted. Not looking at any in particular. As far as things like Lilo and Stitch getting a live action remake, I'm utterly terrified at the idea. That film is a cult classic and many people are excited to see this version, but my question is, why? If they've butchered their Renaissance era remakes, what makes you think they're gonna do right by these cult classics? Like I said earlier, studios like DreamWorks and Sony are where I'm turning to now for quality animation. Yeah, it's a shame to see the beloved companies of our childhoods fall into ruins, but I think it's best if they do. Disney has become so large, there's no way they can sustain themselves at this point. These companies, and to a larger extent, the industry as a whole, needs to get with the times and understand they aren't the billion-dollar printing machines they once were. If that means taking a pay cut, then so be it. Short-term sacrifices could bring big rewards in the long run. As the Wild Robot tells us, it's funny how life works.